Hey, what's up everyone, Zimy here and welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about underwater housing. So I've had a lot of people reaching out to me lately asking me about underwater housing. So I thought it would be pretty useful, pretty interesting to make a little video about it to help you guys understand more about underwater housings, what makes it a good housing, what doesn't, and the difference between the different brands out there. I've been shooting a lot with a lot of different brands. If you follow me on social media, if you've been following my work, you know that underwater, like shooting underwater, is my favorite thing. So yeah, I've had different brands. I've been using pretty much all kinds of brands. So here I have three with me. I have here the Aquatica, which is my main one, the one I use pretty much all the time. Right here I have the Ikelite, it's my older one, and then right here I have the Seafrog, which was my first underwater housing. So for this video, what I will do is I will present all of these housings and like compare them between each other and in the end see which one is the best and why. So let's start off with the way you set it up and you put your camera in the housing. So if we started off with the Seafrog housing, it is probably the easiest one to set up. You just open the door, you put your camera in, and that's it. You don't have to take the lens off, you don't have to put like a little plate below the camera or whatever. You just put your camera in, close it, and you're ready to go. So it's definitely the fastest one. Now if we talk about the Ikelite, first of all you have to put a little plate below your camera, so it's holding the camera inside the housing, and you also have to take the lens off. So first you put the camera body in the housing, and then you put the lens, and then you close the dome on top of your lens. So the thing I really hate about this Ikelite housing is that every time you want to take the dome off the main housing body, you have to unscrew 3 different screws, and the thing is these screws are screwed in plastic, so over time the plastic is completely destroyed, because every time you want to put your camera in and out the housing you have to do it. So yeah, the plastic is just destroyed, the screws don't hold anymore. So yeah, I really don't like it about this housing. It's really not well made. Now if we talk about the Aquatica, it's the same as the Ikelite. You have to screw a little plate at the bottom of your camera in order to hold the camera. The first thing I really like is that it's slightly tilting the screen, so you see better when you're in the water. And then when you want to take off the dome from the main housing body, it's super easy. There's like a sort of quick release port, so you don't have to deal with screws or whatever. It takes a second, boom, you just take it out, put your lens in, and then put the dome back on, which is super fast and super reliable. You don't have to deal with any screws or whatever. So to me it's definitely the best way to do it, 100%. Now another super important thing before entering the water is the leak detector and the vacuum pump. So basically what the vacuum pump is going to do, you're going to take the air out of the housing. That way you can check if there's a leak. If there's no leak, if no air is going back in, then it means that it's fine. You can go in the water. No water is going to go in your housing. But if you take off the air from the housing and then you just leave it a little bit and then some air is going back into the housing, it means that if you go in the water, there's going to be water entering the housing, so there's a leak. So all 3 housings have different ways to do it. On the Seafrog you have like a little pump, you pump the air out, it's going pretty fast. But then there's like a little LED thing. I don't have it here so I cannot really show you, but there's a little LED thing that tells you if it's fine or not. If it's green, it's fine. If it's turning red, it's not fine. The thing that is really not well made on the Seafrog one is that you can only dive down to 10 meters with it. So if you want to go dive more than 10 meters, you have to take the little device off, but then you don't know if it's still fine while diving or if there's a leak. So yeah, definitely not so good on the Seafrog. So now on the Ikelite, the vacuum pump is super big, which is kind of a pain to carry, and also it's not super strong. I've been using it for about a year and it just broke. Just by using it over time, the plastic broke and now it's broken and I have to work with it. And it's a super pain because I didn't want to buy a new one and have it broken again. So I still use the broken one, but it's a big pain to pump all the air out of the housing with this broken pump. And also you don't have any LED helping or anything. So basically the way to see if it's good or not, you just plug your vacuum pump in the housing, you pump the air out, and then you just wait and you see. And if the little indicator is moving, it means that the air is going back in the housing. If it doesn't move, it's fine. But then as soon as you unplug the vacuum and you go in the water, there's no LED, there's no indicator as well. So you, same as the Sea Frog, you don't know if there could be a leak during the dive. You have no way to check. So once again, definitely not the best thing out there. So now on the Aquatica, it is super well made. So there's a LED that is built in the housing. You just click on the LED and then it starts blinking. Then you put your pump, you start pumping the air out, and as soon as the blink changes, or as soon as it stops blinking, it depends on the models, then you're ready to go, and you have like the right pressure inside the housing. If you pump too much, it's gonna start blinking red. Then it means that you pumped too much air out of the housing. There's too much pressure. So that's first a good indicator to know how much air you have to put out, and then you can just leave it like this. You take the vacuum pump out, and the green LED will still, like, it's gonna keep blinking. As long as it's blinking, it means it's fine. If it starts going orange or red, it means that there's a problem. So you can know all the time. If you're diving, you always have the little LED blinking. You can have a look at it. You sure it's fine, everything's fine. If you look at it and it's not green anymore, it's orange or it's gone or whatever, you know that there's a problem. So when you have like a super expensive camera inside your housing, it's super cool to be able to just check during the dive and make sure everything is fine. So definitely the best system is with the Aquatica. So now your camera is in the housing, it's ready, you jump in the water. Now next thing super important to talk about is the control of the camera. So on the Sea Frog, you cannot control everything. You don't have access, at least on my model, I don't know about the other models, but on my model you don't have access to the shutter speed. So for example, if I take the Sony camera, in front here there's like a little dial, like a little wheel. I have the shutter speed, and in the back here I have the aperture. So on the Sea Frog housing I can only change the one here in the back, so only the aperture. I cannot change the front wheel here, which is the shutter speed. So what I have to do underwater, I have to go in the settings, and then I have to switch the two wheels in order to do the shutter speed on the front wheel. Boom, I change the shutter speed, and then I switch again, and then I can change the aperture here. So that's a super big pain to have to do this underwater, especially if you're shooting animals. You don't have time for things like this. So, and shutter speed and aperture are critical. If you just change the setting, if you change the frames per second or whatever, you want to be able to quickly access the settings and change it, you know. And also overall, like, the buttons, they don't always, like, they aren't 100% reliable. For example, the switch button on off, it's not always working. It's working one on maybe 5 times, so that's another thing. I cannot turn the camera off and on, so once I put the camera in the housing, I have to leave it on, and that's it. So yeah, definitely not, you don't have access to all the controls, which is super annoying when diving. Now if we talk about the Ikelite, you have pretty much access to everything, but it doesn't, like, once again, it's not 100% reliable. For example, the front wheel, the shutter, you have a wheel here to change it, but it doesn't always work. And the main issue I've had with the Ikelite is that the buttons are not strong enough. For example, once I was diving, we were like super deep, maybe 60 meters deep, to film some treasure sharks. And with the pressure, since we were so deep, 60 meters, there was a lot of pressure from the ocean, from the environment, and it was pressing all the buttons at the same time. So I was down there, 60 meters deep, treasure shark right in front of me. I wanted to film, and I just couldn't because the pressure was pressing all the button and the camera was going crazy, and I just couldn't film it. So once again, this one definitely not the good choice for me for the controls. It's definitely not on point. Now last one for the controls, the Aquatica. I've never had issues with this one. All the control buttons are like super strong. So if I talk about the depth with a lot of pressure, as I was talking, as we were 60 meters deep, someone was using the Aquatica housing and it had no issue at all while I was struggling with the Ikelite. So also the switch button is working. You can access absolutely everything from your camera: shutter speed, aperture, all the buttons, all the settings. You can even change like the focus zone depending on the autofocus you're using. So yeah, definitely the one that gives you the most control. And yeah, you can really control absolutely everything with the Aquatica. So definitely a big winner for this. So now probably the most important thing is image quality. Of course, the image quality is going to depend on the camera you're using, the camera you're going to put inside the housing, but your housing is also going to have an impact on your image quality. Why? Because you're shooting through a dome. So depending on the dome you have, the glass you're using, it's going to have an impact on the images. So there are two types of domes. There's either acrylic domes that are pretty much made of plastic, and there are glass domes. So why is the dome impacting your image quality? Actually, there are two types of domes. There are acrylic domes, which are basically made of plastic, and there are glass domes. With the acrylic dome, when you're shooting super wide angle, the sides of your image are going to be blurry. When you're shooting with a glass dome, the sides of your image are full sharp. There's no problem at all with this. So you definitely want to shoot with a glass dome, especially when you're shooting wide angle. And why do we shoot wide angle when we're underwater? Because the widest you shoot, the closest you can be to your subject, and the least amount of water you will have between your camera and the subject. So the image is going to be more clear if you're closer to the animal, to the subject, or whatever. So this is why we really want to shoot wide. I only shoot super wide, so I'm using the Sony 12-24 f2.8, or I'm using the Sony 90mm f2.8 macro when I want to get like super close-ups and stuff like this. So now if we start once again with the sea frogs and the dome and how it's impacting your image quality. So with the sea frog, you cannot have any glass dome. So your dome is going to be acrylic, meaning that the sides of your image are going to be blurry when shooting super wide. And also I've seen that over time, even though I'm super careful and I never scratched it, it looks like the dome is full of scratches, but from the inside. I think it's just like the built material of the dome that they're using is not like a really good quality, and over time it's just like kind of falling apart, and now it's not like super clear anymore, and it's really affecting the image quality you're getting. With the Ikelite, same, you don't have any glass domes available, so you're gonna have to be shooting acrylic, meaning that when shooting super wide, it's gonna be blurry on the side. However, on the Ikelite, I think the build quality of the dome is much better than on the sea frog, because I haven't noticed any issue with it like sort of falling apart over time. So definitely better than the sea frog, but still you don't have a glass dome, so it's gonna impact your image for sure. And finally, with the Aquatica, on this brand you can get glass domes. For example, right here I have the 8-inch mega dome, which is super convenient because it's super big, so it's amazing to do split shots, like when you see half above the water, half below the water. It's great, and also the dome is made of glass, so it's super clear even when shooting wide angle, like super wide angle, 12mm or whatever. Your image is going to be super clear and sharp also on the sides. So yeah, definitely once again a big winner. The only thing is the glass domes are super expensive, so and also they are super fragile, so you really want to be careful with it. You don't want to scratch it. For example, I have one as well that is made of acrylic for the Aquatica, and it got literally destroyed by a mako shark during a recent dive. The mako kept coming at us, trying to eat the camera and everything, and he literally destroyed the dome. So for example, when I'm diving with mako sharks, I always put the acrylic dome and not the glass dome, because I don't want to buy a new glass dome every time it gets wrecked by a shark. So by a mako shark, especially with tigers, hammerheads, everything, I always use the glass dome. But when I'm diving with makos, I usually prefer using the acrylic dome. because yeah, if you get scratches on the glass dome, you cannot do anything about it. With the acrylic, you can repair it. I've never done it, but I heard you can repair it, but the glass dome you cannot. But yeah, for the best image quality, definitely go for a glass dome. Another super important topic when shooting underwater is the buoyancy of your housing. If your housing is super buoyant, like super positive, when you will be shooting, it will keep pushing upwards, and you will have to push downwards with your hands to sort of counterbalance it and keep it straight, which will make your shot super unstable and super hard to get like smooth shots. So you really want housing that is as neutral as possible when shooting underwater. So if we start this time with the two housings that are made of plastic, so the seafrogs and the Ikelite, both of them are, as I said, made of plastic. They are full of air, so when you're in the water, they're gonna go up. They're gonna be super buoyant, so it's gonna be super annoying to shoot, super unstable, because it's always gonna be willing to go upwards, so you will have to hold it harder. What you can do is you can attach like a weight below the housing, but it's kind of a pain. It's hard to make it like really like stay there and not move and stuff. So yeah, definitely these two housing are super bad for the buoyancy. They are both super positive, and it's really having like a big impact on your images and on your ability to make smooth, stable footage. So now if we take the Aquatica, the whole body is made of metal, so it's super heavy, and it's actually counterbalancing all the air that is inside the housing, making it totally neutral when in the water. So it's not going up, it's not going down, so I can literally hold it with two fingers like this, and it's just gonna stay straight. So the buoyancy of this housing is perfect, and it makes it super easy to have like super smooth footage. So once again, big winner is the Aquatica for this part. So since we were talking about the material of the different housings, let's move forward and talk about the build quality of all the housings. So as I said, the Aquatica is made of metal. It's like super heavy, it's strong, so you're not afraid of breaking it. It's super strong. You can go around, as I said, even if a mako shark is coming at me, I know it's gonna be good. While the two others are made of plastic. Even when you're traveling with it, I'm always afraid of like breaking little parts and stuff. So once again, the Aquatica for me is a huge winner when it comes to the build quality. So in order to conclude this video, which housing is the best for you and why, you have to talk about the price tag, of course. So starting off, I would say I would never buy the Ikelite because it's super expensive. It's more than 3,000 bucks. I think I paid mine around 3,500 bucks. And you definitely don't get what you pay for, because you pay a lot of money, but in the end your housing is made of plastic. It's not strong, it's not reliable, you cannot use all the controls. As I said, when you're deep down, it's not working. So if you spend a lot of money on a piece of equipment, you want to be able to get the most of it. You want to be able to get the shots you want. And when I was down there at 60 meters, I simply couldn't get a single shot because the housing just wasn't working. The build quality is not good. The vacuum pump broke after less than a year using it. So I would really not recommend the Ikelite. So it comes down to the Aquatica and the seafrogs, and in the end I think you really get what you pay for. The seafrog is super cheap. It's still about 1,000 bucks, but you cannot expect to have the same thing when you pay 1,000 bucks than the same thing when you pay about 3,000 bucks, you know. So I would say if you're not really into filming underwater, if you're not sure, whatever, maybe the seafrog could be an option. But as I said, there's a lot of things that make it not the best housing to get, because you don't get the best image quality. It's not the most reliable one. I would be pretty afraid as well for my camera, because you put a super expensive camera inside and you don't want it to flood. So there's a lot of things that make it, I think, not the best option, but it's cheap. For me, there's no discussion about it. I mean, to me, the clear winner is the Aquatica. It's quite expensive, but you pay something that you will be able to use and that you will be able to rely on. It's strong, it's not gonna break, and it's gonna give you the absolute best image quality while keeping your expensive camera inside super safe. So that's my conclusion for it. if you really want to get the best images, the best underwater images, be in the best conditions to shoot, because when shooting wildlife, we all know it's super hard. You don't have 1,000 times to try and do the shots again and stuff, so you really want to be able to get the shots when you have to. So I would 100% go for the Aquatica. So yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this little video. I tried to be clear and fast. If you did enjoy, please consider subscribing. It always helps me a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you want to see more of my underwater shots, you can follow me on Instagram as well. I post a lot of stuff. And yeah, here on YouTube as well. As I said, just subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one.